Everywhere I go across the world, I meet people of African descent, call them African diaspora, and they always say the media does not represent the motherland well. The media does not represent us well. They always complain about the narrative. The narrative is the same, it's not changing. And I tell myself, well, who's going to change the narrative? Is it the media or is it the people? I am so fortunate that today we have in our virtual studio, our virtual fireside, Professor Bill Ndi, who is Professor of Modern Languages, Communication, and Philosophy at Tuskegee University, one of the most historic institutions in the American South. I am so fortunate that I have known him, I've learned from him, I've been his mentee for a long time, and I could not resist asking him to come into this studio and share with us his thoughts about the African diaspora and whether the African diaspora is contributing in changing the narrative or is inhibiting or hurting the narrative about people of African descent. Welcome aboard. Welcome into this virtual studio. Welcome to the fireside, Prof. It's absolutely a privilege to have you in today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fomukwe. It is my pleasure to be part of this fireside discussion. I've followed you too on your fireside discussions for a long time now. And upon your reflection and talking about the diaspora and the narrative, we shouldn't forget that it is an African way of thinking. If you look at African epistemology, that is the ways of knowing things, the ways of learning and apprehending things. In Africa, everywhere you go, they tell you if the lions cannot tell the tale of the hunt, the stories will always glorify the hunters.
The hunter. That's right.
And now we are caught in a situation where we are supposed to tell our stories.
Thank you.
Without mincing words, without shying away from the stories, and telling or speaking truth to power in such a way that the young ones who are coming after us, whether in the diaspora or at home, they familiarize themselves with the reality and challenges we have been through. If we can tell our stories without shying away, without necessarily copying this, let's say, the style, the way others do it, right? Not that we cannot learn from the way others do their things. We can learn from them, but we have to cherry pick. We have to pick and choose, and pick and choose wisely.
Yes.
Because if we do it their own way, we will never have a mastery of how they do it. And that is why with your platform, the virtual fireside, it brings to mind the time growing up on the continent. And I believe many young people who are growing up in the continent today still experience a lot of it, where you have children seated in the kitchen beside the mother or the grandmother, right? And there is fireside, cooking, roasting corn and passing it around, eating and telling stories, cracking jokes. That is our way. And we must not relent in telling the stories the way it has been done. And in this digital age, or the age of digital divide, I would simply encourage, we shouldn't only transmit those stories orally, we should document them.
Thank you.
Documenting them is documenting them for
posterity.
posterity.
Yes.
It is not documenting them for show off.
Yeah.
Document them, and one day it shall be read. I know you might not be familiar with this. I would say a thing or two, then give you the room for the next question. Because one of the areas I studied were the early Quakers. And early Quakers actually were at the origin. Most people will not know. They will tell you when they're looking at the English novel, they tell you the English novel, all right, originated from Daniel Defoe and the rest. But guess what? Before Daniel Defoe, the Quakers have been practicing journaling. That is documenting the persecution that we're going through, their sufferings for posterity, and they did it as a way of empowering their future generations. And I think we can do that. We realize ours transmitted orally down the line. Maybe the story ended with one person. That one person who might have passed away, or might have had health issues related memory loss and things, and the story did not continue. So the only way to continue our stories and to give them life is to document them. We document them digitally as well as analog. That is in textbooks, as well as what you are doing today.
Yes.
This recording might last 100 years, and 100 years, somebody would stumble on our conversation, and they would be like,
improve it.
This is what and how these people were thinking. So I'll pause there. Thank you for the opportunity to address this issue with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that you're already beginning to draw some insights from Quaker traditions, because I'm a big fan of Quakers. But you see, this channel is dedicated to long form storytelling, which I believe in some small way, for me, as somebody who is very passionate about storytelling, I want to make sure that I can bring in people who are very informed on how our great grandparents have done it, who are also informed on contemporary ways, so that they can draw from these different traditions and we can keep a small repository of what we know for future generations. I don't know if our children would adopt this, but at least we have it in a separate vault so that they can use that in continuing to regenerate their own knowledge. But you brought a very important point, Prof, which I really want us to maybe draw something from and work on. Do you consider that people of African descent, or people of African people who are in African diaspora, do you consider that we are getting submerged and our voices are getting drowned out in diaspora, or are we still maintaining some of our traditions and projecting our voices above all the noise that is so prevalent today in the world? Are we losing our voices, or are we still maintaining our voices and telling our stories, especially in the diaspora? And I know you've been in Australia, you've been in Europe, you've been in Africa, you've been almost all the continents, or all the continents of the world. Are we losing it, or are we still keeping it?
We're not losing, if at all any. If at all any, I would say we are making strides. It just suffices to look at the number of authors, the number of publications coming out of Africa. You would be amazed that what the digital revolution has done for the African voices. I know for a fact that before the 90s, we could count, right? when you look at every country in Africa, you could count the number of authors in tens, not even hundreds, a country. But now you count writers in every country in Africa in the thousands.
No kidding.
That is something we should celebrate.
Absolutely.
And not believe the noise being made. It might be made in other media platforms, but what I might want to encourage your listeners to do and to think is not only to celebrate African writers with lip service, they should indulge in reading African writers.
Thank you very much for saying that.
They should indulge in reading African writers.
Yes.
Don't let the others read your stories and then they tell you. We end up with a situation, right? Like the situation where this white writer, I'm not going to call his name on the platform because it is not so certain that he was it is clear he wrote the work. Okay. The imprisonment of Obatala is written by an unknown and obscure author who names himself Ejimere. All right. When you look at the name in the imprisonment of Obatala, right?
Yes.
There is a character in it named Obotunde. And in Yoruba culture, Obo means monkey. Tunde means has come. So this professor who had spent time teaching in Yoruba land, had learned Yoruba, all right, decides to cast a narrative in Yoruba land in which he considers this character giving them names, a monkey.
Wow.
And I think if we don't tell our stories,
others will do it for us.
Others will do it. If we don't define ourselves, others will define us. If we don't live up to the expectations we set for ourselves, others will push us to live up to their expectations. And we should actually understand that we are not in this world to live up to anybody's expectations. Neither are they here to live up to our expectations. Because if we set our expectations for them, it is certainly going to be too high, and they would never meet such expectations.
Wow. So, if I understand you well, this guy wrote it and misrepresents us.
That's it.
That's right. So that takes us to the issue of distortions. There are a lot of distortions of our own history, of our own origins, of our indigenous knowledge. There are so many distortions. Just recently, I read about the Wall of Benin, which I'd never heard about. And never heard about. So it turns out, because we have allowed the invaders, so to speak, or others to write our history, they chose what to write. And they wrote things that highlighted their own selfish interests and ignored our own indigenous accomplishments. So I want you to talk a little bit about the distortions. You just talk about the Obotunde issue. Now, the Wall of Benin and many other distortions. Tell us, are we, by not writing for so long, only using the narrative or only using the verbal record keeping, have we contributed in helping the world to distort our own records or to marginalize our own stories because they were not exactly written? They were not written in a form that could be translated from one generation to another.
All right. The thing is this. let's not blame orality. Let us not blame the mode of transmission. Let's remember that what the colonial, I listened very carefully, and I would like your audience to remember that they distorted a lot of things and call themselves masters, colonial masters. But I would like your audience to remember they are not colonial masters, but colonial monsters.
Okay.
All right, what the colonial monsters did, they did not only take away or silence the orality, they even silence the written information. Because until date, this is information your audience might not even be aware of. The oldest running university on planet Earth is on the African continent.
In Mali?
No, not that. Not the Sankore. I mean, that has been running consistently, right?
Yes.
Without stop.
Okay.
The University of Marrakesh in Morocco has been functioning as a university since the 9th century.
No kidding.
Yes.
Okay.
The Sankore Institute functioned. They destroyed the information that was there.
Yeah.
All right. And even had their propped up Boko Haram burn some of the manuscripts under the guise that they were done by terrorists. But it is all very well orchestrated. Because when you talk about distortions, let's not forget that even the Vatican has a museum of African art. And these African arts are objects, spiritual objects from Africa that were looted in the name of them being demonic and satanic. If they were so demonic and satanic,
what
are they doing
exactly
in the Holy See?
Yes.
What are they doing there?
Yes.
And not being destroyed,
yes.
and not being burnt? What are they doing there that they want? Even Africans, when you go those museums, you don't go and visit them for free. Yes. Even if you're visiting them for free, you must have paid an airlines that belongs to them to come there.
Exactly.
You must have paid transportation to come there.
Yes.
When you are there, you must have eaten, you must have paid,
contributed to the economy.
Contributed to the economy.
Yeah.
So the whole concept of distortions, right?
Yeah.
We have to be very mindful that we don't start blaming ourselves for other people's responsibility. What we have to do is to reverse engineer the narrative, retell the narrative as we know it to be. We cannot constantly allow people, we have knowledge enough. Like I'm telling you now about the oldest running university. Let's go to that institution, try to find out what kind of studies were done there 1,000 years ago.
Yes.
What are the things that were done? What were the findings?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
The Timbuktu manuscripts, it was partially burned, but who cares about that? We should go and dig in those manuscripts to find out what is happening. I'm talking here and just thinking about one of my very good friends and a renowned world-class photographer, Chester Higgins, who has done a wonderful work. And I need Africans to know the wonderful works of Chester Higgins. Chester Higgins documented in the Sacred Nile, right? With images and photography, what Africa was, even as far back as 22,000 years ago.
Wow. How is that possible?
It is possible with images, archaeological work, archaeological findings, writings. How many of us here knows that in the tombs of one of the pharaohs, right?
Yes.
More than 10,000 years ago, you have the complete books of Psalms written on the floor, walls, and ceiling of that tomb.
Wow.
It is in the sacred Nile.
Hmm.
So I want us, we have the tools,
Yes.
we have the mechanisms to rediscover what has been lost to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we should not be those who have been taught to hate themselves so much so that we don't see any good coming out of what we have.
Yes.
If we can do that, then we will be getting ourselves to the point where we can put our fingers on exactly what the narrative should be.
Should be.
We should be correcting
Yes.
those narratives and setting the record straight.
Fantastic. Yes. We absolutely need to set the record straight. We need more people to be talking in conversations like this, writing, publishing, because without that, we cannot reclaim our narrative. So, knowing what we know today with the influences of social media, which is sometimes very transitory, with the influences of distractions from mainstream media and all consumerism and all of that, do you think we can reclaim our story? We are like the lion that has been fighting with the hunter. We almost don't have any chance against the hunter because the hunter has a large mouth. By hunter, you know whom I'm talking about. The monstrous ones.
Yes.
They have engineered things to a point where the lion, even though he's a king of the jungle, almost cannot reclaim his story. So my question is, given the transitory nature of current social media, social influences, distractions, distortions, can we reclaim the African narrative? Which points us to the fact that we are the origin of all civilization.
It is reclaimable. It is reclaimable. And as I say, when we are educated, I don't mean certificated.
Okay.
Because you could have
it's a big difference, yeah.
You could have certificated imbeciles. You could have certificated idiots. But what I mean there is when we are informed and we have the knowledge,
yes,
we can make judicious use of the knowledge. And making judicious use of the knowledge is making sure that our narratives, that our stories are taught very early on to our own children.
Thank you.
And let them know that whatever other information they're getting, those informations are distractions, but they should. It is like saying, because I write tragedies, I should never watch a comedy. No, I can watch a comedy for distraction, right? And I can look at that comedy in my tragedy as a comic relief. I can use it as a comic relief.
Yes.
But I cannot make a comedy, right?
Yes.
As a tragedian, my mainstay. We have to reclaim that story. It is true. There is another narrative or another saying, right? If the monsters are hunters who've learned to shoot without missing, let us learn to be birds that can fly without perching.
I see.
And the only way we can fly without perching is to tell our stories unrelentingly, tell our stories without caring for validation. The problem that kills our narratives is that people, when they set out to write, they want to write because they want instant glory. They want to be famous immediately.
Thank you.
No, you cannot be famous immediately.
Yeah.
You have to, it is like being an adult. You and I today walk, we can run, we can stroll if we want to, we can pace ourselves given our strength, but this could not have happened if we did not crawl on all four.
Yes.
If we did not start by staggering.
Yes.
And then by walking, gaining balance, walking, it will not happen. So anybody who tries to reclaim the narrative and tell the narrative as if that narrative was the greatest thing that nobody has ever heard, or no, it is, we have heard those the narratives, but make sure you proceed. Take your baby steps, take your teenage steps, take your adult step, and your old age steps. That is when the children would run, all right?
Yes.
To celebrate around you, like they sit under the old baobab tree,
yeah,
and take the fruits of wisdom from the elders that you are.
Yes.
So I think we can reclaim it. We just have to be intentional how we do it. We cannot leave our reclamation of our own stories
to others,
to still be guided by a media that we do not control.
Thank you.
We need to have control over the media that we are using. It is sad equally that the media we are using, at the origin of which we have many Black people, but they come up with some of these discoveries, and for pecuniary reasons, for monetary reasons, all right, they forfeit the control of it to others. We can reclaim the narrative and even encourage the young people who are coming up with their findings, their discoveries. They should hold on to those discoveries and not hurry up to trade it or to sell it. I remember reading something or hearing somebody say somebody was in a hurry to sell their land and buy a trumpet, the land their father legated to them to buy a trumpet. And the question the person was asking is, if you sell the land your father legated to you because you wanted to buy a trumpet to blow for people to see you, on what land will you stand to blow that trumpet? So we have to make sure, yes.
That, Prof, that is a vuvuzela moment.
Yeah.
But on a more serious note, maybe, I mean, I still use vuvuzela, but I'm also looking for a cow horn. So because last week we had an African American guy come on this program.
Yeah.
And when I pulled up the vuvuzela, I said, "But you're a proud Graffiti man. Are you telling me that you cannot find a bull horn?"
Well,
so I said to him,
you could find a bull horn or an elephant tusk.
Yes, I'll be looking for a bull horn very soon. Yeah, but this one I bought from Johannesburg when I was transiting there some years ago. It's got some beats. You know, these beats are from home. So, but you made a very important point there, Prof, which is about writers don't have to be certificated. They don't have to have big degrees. I don't know if Achebe had any big degree. I don't know if Mongobeti had big degrees. I don't know if Shoinka, with whom you've worked a lot. Yes, they're literate people, but they did not necessarily have all the terminal degrees that we see people today think that they should only honor the work that is written by someone at that level. But my big question here is, you work in an academic institution. Do you still see the hunger to tell our story in the eyes of the young people that you train? Especially, I know you work in a historically Black institution that is very, very, very historic. Do you see that hunger in them? Do you see that desire to tell authentic stories, or they're just trying to tell stories that can catapult them into fame and find a quick a break into Hollywood? What are you seeing?
All right. I'm not going to say what I'm seeing. I'm going to tell you what I do with the young people.
Okay.
Just as a follow-up to your question, if we can reclaim our stories, if we can tell our stories. For the past 14 years at Tuskegee University, every student that has taken a class with me has had to write a poem, a short story, or a dramatic sketch about his or her experience at Tuskegee. I would be requesting a release time at some point down the line to put all of this together in a book, because I challenge the students. You've come to college. You came with a story. You are in college. You are living a story. When you would leave the college, what story do you want somebody reading you to remember about who you were, who you are? So it is a way for me to tell the students that all is not lost. All is not lost. They should tell their stories. And I tell them every story is worth telling.
Absolutely.
I would even borrow from the transcendentalists, Henry David Thoreau, who said, and it is what I use to tell students too, who says, every man is a poet if he can. Which means in each and every one of us, we have narratives to tell. But what distinguishes or what kills many narratives is that people fear to tell their narratives. People have lost the child in them. They have, because when you have the child in you, you are eager to hear stories. You are eager to tell them.
Yes.
And that is what I always tell anybody who sees me and says, you are a writer. How do you do it? I said, just retain the child in you. If you retain the child in you, you would be able to tell the story.
Absolutely.
And so I encourage the students, and many of the students, they do it. Some of them, before they leave college, they have written and published with all the facilities that the digital media is affording us. You have students, even if their narrative is not the best, written in the best of languages, they have them out there on Amazon Publisher.
Fair
they
enough.
have them on self-published. At least.
Yeah. It's an effort.
A narrative.
Yes.
And I want to say this. I'm not saying that to denigrate what they've done, because in my studies of Quakerism, I realized that most of the early Quakers were semi-literate people.
Yep.
But if you go into their literature, just within the space of 1647 to 1710 or 1720, Quakers, early Quakers, published 3,750 works that have not even been explored. I simply scrape the tip of the iceberg. And in this literature, you would be amazed that these people who were semi-literate, they documented what they documented, and they even had influence on the English language, you would be hard pressed to find an area of endeavor without a Quaker influence.
Wow.
Yes. And if you read their literature, you would say, okay, these people were not educated. That's why their language is this. But when you don't pay attention to just the language, but to the substance, you come out enriched. You come out like a mine of knowledge.
Yes, yes. And it's thanks to their ability to put pen to paper, regardless of whether it is perfect or not. Every story deserves to be told.
That is it.
Every story deserves to be told. Now, when you look at the Africans who are born in Africa, and the Africans who are born overseas, are you seeing any convergence of thought? I know you're a philosopher. Are you seeing any convergence of appreciation of our common heritage? Are you seeing any movements? Are you seeing any trends that give you hope? Just like you know about the Jewish diaspora and the Jewish in the homeland, they talk to each other. They do consult with each other. Do you see that, or are you seeing a dystopian in our diaspora?
All right. Let me address this way. I'm happy you asking this question because it is one of the battles that we as a people struggle with. It is not dystopian. It is we talked about distortions. There are narratives that the monstrous media has out there, pitting those from Africa and in a very negative light. When they come to those in the diaspora, pitting them to Africans, they pit them in a very negative light. So what happens there is that if we know our stories, if we know ourselves,
history,
and we tell the stories, and we stretch the olive branch to our brothers, right? We would resolve a lot of problems. I have always contended that the problem of a black man anywhere on earth should be the problem of every black man everywhere on earth. We cannot sit and turn a blind eye when a police officer sits on the neck of George Floyd, right? And we say, oh, that guy is African American. Then we look at him from the light of what the media has projected as a stereotypical African American male who is brutal, who is a drug dealer, who is a pimp, who is good for nothing, who is a thief, who is just there to rob. No, if we understand that the media is there to divide us because they understand that we, in our numbers, we are stronger together, that in our being together, we are a force that cannot be challenged. We need to be having these conversations, to be opening our doors. If we come from Africa and in the diaspora, I'm not saying we don't have prejudices. We have prejudices amongst us. But what are we doing to kill the prejudices? I'll tell you a little story, because I teach here, and I have been telling my students. In one year, I was talking to my students, and I told them, look, the best way to integrate was get to know where your African brothers are coming from. And to the African brothers, they should get to know, right, what you have gone through. Because people don't even understand that the trauma of slavery, the trauma of Jim Crow, the trauma of discrimination, the trauma of marginalization, the trauma of police brutality is affecting the way young Black people function.
Yes.
All of this, if we take all of them into account and we approach them with that understanding that we have a common ancestry, we have a common origin. Let us tell our stories, fix what has to be fixed.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And then see what we cannot fix, which is to be thrown away. We throw those away. We are going to do a lot in life.
Fantastic.
Asking whether I have hopes, because I told my students, some of my students were very eager when they heard from me that as African Americans, they shouldn't be fooled by the new slave plantation, which is the food industry. They tell you, okay, work all your money, go and eat McDonald's. When what you pay in McDonald's for $10, you can actually produce it for less than $2. Who is fooling who? I told them, if you don't know how to cook, I will teach you how to cook some African dishes. And they were in their numbers and ready to start a cooking club
to learn
how to cook African dishes.
Oh my God! And Prof, who is a philosopher, who is a linguist, who is an interpreter, a translator, a polyglot, was going to wear an apron and get into the kitchen and show them how to make. What did you get? What do you get to teach them, or do you recruit somebody?
Listen,
do you find somebody to show them?
What people might not know, my mother owned a restaurant when we were growing up in the park, and during the summer holidays, I was the chef in the kitchen. Okay. So there is nothing in the kitchen I cannot cook. I bake cake, I bake bread, I make donuts, puff, gâteau, pancakes. Wow. I do all of it from scratch. So I want to teach people or those students. I had to teach them how to do like their pancakes or crepes from scratch, and they know, because what you want to do in life, if you want good health, you want to know what goes into your body.
Stomach, yes.
If you don't make, as somebody once said, you don't make your food your medicine, you would make medicine your food. And to experience that, you just need to take a walk in one of the nursing homes in this country. You would see people who did not pay attention to their food, and now they are there. Their food is their medication.
Medication.
To stay alive.
Oh my God, that is poignant.
I think I will take the next question.
That is poignant. That's poignant. Okay, now I know another dimension of you. I've always known you to be so multi-talented, a polyglot, true polyglot, and somehow I'm always very attracted. I always go to those who know, and it turns out a lot of people coming to this program are polyglots. They can talk about anything. Last week I had a lady who is also from the motherland. She owns Motherland Kitchen in Maryland, and she told me that fufu is trending. And I said, fufu is trending? I was like, that's beautiful. And she's teaching a class at a community college. It is flooded with both people of African descent and people of non-African descent to learn African gastronomy. So, Prof, you're telling me that there is hope. And I say, okay, when a policeman is brutal to a fellow African-American brother, we don't like that. But it turns out even in the motherland, policemen too are brutal to our own younger brothers. So my question is, are we free? On one hand, we're running away from the monstrous regimes in diaspora sometimes, and sometimes even in our own motherland, we also have a neo-colonialist monstrous monster that is stepping on the necks of our brothers. We've seen that in Nigeria. We've seen that in Cameroon. We've seen that in South Africa. We've seen that everywhere. So my question is, with all what is going on, do we still have the capacity to tell our stories unfettered? Do we still have the capacity to tell stories that are authentic, notwithstanding all what is going on? Because I can breathe. I can breathe, and I know some of my brothers cannot breathe also.
Yes. Yes. Listen, I'll take George Floyd and I'll tell the world something. George Floyd's story, as tragic as it is, tells us we can tell our story. He is under the knee of a police officer. He doesn't forget where he came from. He said, "Mother, Mama, help me. Mother, Mother, help me." Even if that is the last thing we should say, right?
Yes.
If that is our last breath, we still have the power to tell our stories. That is George Floyd's story.
Mm-hmm.
And that story, as tragic as it is, to me, is a story of hope. Because this is somebody who did nothing, who did not offend. Let's assume he had a fake $20 bill. But how many people have been shot because they have the monopoly dollar on them in their pocket, or tried to trick their friends that they had a dollar bill? So we can still tell our stories.
I have my fair share of fake dollars.
Thank you. Thank you. So that, I'm happy you showing that.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to tell our stories. And the thing is, when we are brutalized by the police at home or in the diaspora, we should not let the stories die. There are stories that should continue to be told.
Mm-hmm.
There are stories that people need to read.
Mm-hmm.
There are stories that people should hear about. There are stories people should learn from.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be a story, all right, well, it happened, it has happened, the person is gone, so what are we talking about it? No. And one of the things I would say for us in the diaspora and at home,
Mm-hmm.
is that we should relinquish, just toss aside the attitude that we have about things past.
Mm-hmm.
That, oh, that's a long time ago, we don't have interest in listening to that.
Mm-hmm.
No, your history informs your presence.
Mm-hmm.
Your presence, right, or your present,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Mm-hmm.
informs your future.
Yes.
If you relinquish your past, then your present is questionable and your future is non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
So when we cast a look at what happened in the past to our young people who were brutalized, right?
Mm-hmm.
It should be a motivation for us to reorganize the society and even consider reassigning the police
Mm-hmm.
to what they should be doing,
Mm-hmm.
and not being brutal.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are countries, if you take Southern Cameroons, I should talk of Southern Cameroons,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the country in which I was born,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
I'm a Southern Cameroonian. Even if people are not happy that the country is splitting into two, it will split. I'm not here, I'm not a prophet, but 30 years ago, I had written a book that showed the country was that country was going to split into two. Now, what I'm saying is that when there is this issue of brutality, in Southern Cameroons, we didn't have police brutality. The police force did not use to carry guns. They had baton sticks, right? And the goal was not to
civilize.
The goal was not to subdue somebody to the point where you incapacitate them. The problem, even when you were a criminal, they didn't send you to prison as the prisons we know today. The prisons in Southern Cameroons were reformatory centers. There were centers where citizens were retrained to come back and live in society like normal human beings. But what has happened is that we need to re-educate ourselves, re-educate our systems, re-educate our society, and understand that an informed society, an educated society is a much more peaceful society. I might extrapolate a little bit and demonstrate something to you. You see, the United States of America, the cost of education is so high, prohibiting people from easy access to education. I would like to compare the United States, where education is so costly, and a small country like Switzerland, where education is free from kindergarten to PhD. In the US, if you look at the prison population, 70% are grade school dropout. About 10% high school dropout. About 5%. As you're going up, the number is shrinking. By the time you get to people with a PhD, you have less than 1% of the prison population that's in prison. Whether the prison population that have a PhD. And when you go to Switzerland, right? A country where education is free, people get educated. The total number of prisoners in the whole country, I say this, people can verify. People can verify. The last time I checked, in the whole of Switzerland, the total number of people in the whole country in prison was about 6,000 people. That is way less than the prison population in half of a state in the US, or even in the smallest, the least populated state in the US has many more prisoners than the whole country of Switzerland. And that boils down to education. So to retelling our stories, we can reorganize our society, confront the organization of education in a way that benefits everybody, that benefits the individual, that benefits the government, that benefits the community at large.
Fantastic. So there is definitely a lot of hope if we look into our history, know where we're coming from, and even just learn this little factoid. Police in Southern Cameroon never used to carry guns, they carry batons. That tells you that's a civilized people. Those are people with civilized minds. There's no reason to kill. There's a reason to control and to give people the opportunity to reform themselves. That's really insightful. Now, just one more question, or one or two more. I know we have to at least touch on the fact that you are an ambassador for a very important Pan-African organization, the Pan-African Writers Association, and you represent those in diaspora. Can you talk a little bit briefly about that? Because I know recently you were overseas to talk about issues relating to how we tell our stories as writers, as authors in diaspora. And then we'll talk about the final one. We can talk about the time you spent with the very, very wise Shoinka. But first, about you being an ambassador for African writers in diaspora. You want to chime on that?
All right. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It is really a great opportunity for me to talk about the ambassadorial work for Pan-African Writers Association, Power. And what I have to say, I have already dropped hints on some of the things that I have as goal. You are telling us about telling our stories. We work a whole lot in silos, and we like to work in silos. It is not as if we are not good at what we do, but we like to just do our things individually, ignoring the fact that the look at these 5 fingers of the hand, what they can accomplish when they grab together is much more than what a single finger like this could grab. So my idea and advocacy is that we, as writers in the diaspora, we have to regroup, and rethink about our narratives, about our stories, about the way we approach writing. We cannot afford, having been oppressed for many centuries, talk about taking our brothers and sisters into slavery, talk about they got tired of taking us into slavery. They said, oh, the best way is let's go there and use them as our slaves, right? And then after they realized that they could not continue under such circumstances, they say, all right, we have a strategy. Let us give them independence. Independence is not given. Independence is not given. Now, if we cannot regroup, re-strategize, retell our stories, all right, and define for ourselves what our literature is, we cannot use Western canons to define and explain what we have as literature. In one forum, I was given the opportunity to talk about best African books of 2023. I decided on purpose to use a book I had published called The Quotable Uncle. The Quotable Uncle is just a book of aphorisms. And aphorisms are short, poetic verses, just snappy. But I had a challenge being told that was not literature. It was not poetry. And I was like, wait a minute. Even the Westerners who give us, who claim to set the canons we are following, somebody like such as La Bruyère in France and Apollinaire, they became celebrated men of letters because of aphorisms. Why would Africans not celebrate their own aphorisms?
Which are the kernels of wisdom that they use to organize and run their communities.
That's it. It is like Achebe says it, right? Proverbs are the palm oil, whether the palm oil with which words are eaten. So if you understand that, I think this ambassadorial work, which was a very great honor to being appointed to that position, I think what I want any writer or storyteller listening to you to do is to reach out to me so that they can subscribe or they can register as a member of the Pan-African Writers Association, especially the diaspora branch, which is Writers of African Origins and in the diaspora. That is the Warford
Okay.
All right.
Where is it headquartered?
It is headquartered in Tuskegee.
Amazing. The right place. The right place. Yes.
So where I am, that is where it is headquartered. Okay. And I would like to have the writers in their numbers. It will be a platform where we will meet. We can organize our annual conferences. We can organize our book shows. We don't need to rely on some big donors or mega donors. When they see what we are doing, they will come to us. We don't need to run after them.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have to think along those lines. It is an opportunity for the African writer to be celebrated. Yes. It is an opportunity for the African writer to celebrate himself. Yeah. And not only celebrate himself only in Africa, but celebrate yourself in the diaspora. Absolutely. Let us be the Agama lizard that fell from on top of the rock and nodded its head. I did it. I've done a good job. I did it. Right? Yes. It is all because it is always good when you write something good and feel good about it, and you take it out. Share with the world. Share with the world. Okay, that's interesting. Yes. Okay, I know we will have to get the contact or the link and include it in our post-production so that people can find the Writers Association. Yes. And the last question here is, I know you spent quite a bit of time welcoming the legend to the diaspora, Woe Shoinka. You spent some time with him in Tuskegee. I want to just find out from you, how was it like interacting with him one-on-one? How is he like one-on-one, and what did you get to learn from him? Did you get to take away some some insights that you can share with our viewers who are watching from the motherland, from America, from Asia, from Middle East and beyond, and Europe? Yes. All right. Just as you're talking, I'm tempted. Can I just tap and pick something? Yes, please. Really quick? All good. Well, thank you very much. You talking, and this is the fruit, right? This is what was born. The herald before the encounter. Yeah. And there is one that is to be born after the encounter. Look, meeting Professor Wole Soyinka. Everybody, I am certain, who has met him, has been with him one-on-one, would tell you everything positive. I have not ceased to be amazed by his wit, by his wisdom, by his strength, by his energy, by his unflinching opposition to dictatorship and autocracy. Yes. I really learned a whole lot. I remember, I'll say this, because he's just, it is like you get into a library of books, right? Yeah. All the books in the library are the excellent book you want to read, the excellent book you want to talk about. Yeah. And somebody asks you, how was your time in the library? What are you going to say? You're going to be lost. I mean. No, you can't say much. Yeah. But just so you know, I spent time with him. It so happened that after our meetings, after I gave the keynote speech at his birthday celebration, fate has it that we had to travel together to the airport in the same car, taken by the same chauffeur. Yeah. All right. Yeah. We're taken to the airport. Was that pre-arranged? No, it was not.
Oh my goodness.
I said this was not.
Oh,
just
okay.
listen. This
That's
was
interesting.
not.
Yes.
It was never pre-arranged.
Yes.
You would be amazed. Because for me, the diplomatic service had claimed that I was going to leave the airport at 3 a.m.
Yes.
So I knew I could not go to sleep. I got myself really ready, packed my things from the hotel, just sat in the hotel lobby, was waiting for 3. 3 o'clock came and passed. The cab did not show up. 4 o'clock, somebody shows up. The driver, the chauffeur, we are here to pick Professor Wole Soyinka and Professor Bilndi. I'm like, wait a minute.
Are we in the same boat? Right in the same boat?
Are we riding in the same?
Are riding in the same boat, or what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had about 40 minutes ride.
Fantastic.
From the hotel to the airport. We got to the airport, did our check-ins. Then he took me.
And he's still very stable. He's still very strong.
Let me tell you something. If you think I'm strong, you need to see him.
No kidding.
Yes.
He has a physical regimen, or is it his choice of food, or just the genes?
You know what?
Yeah.
That is a question he can tell you better. Even though we had we talked about a whole lot. Yeah. We talked about our childhood. We talked about our parents, because it so happens, right? Yeah. That his father was a headmaster, mine was a headmaster. His mother was a super religious and disciplinary woman. Mine was a super. So we talked and laughed about those stories and talked about how it turns out that, our lives intersect at many junctures. You see? So I spent that time with him, talked a lot. We looked at a whole number of things. And then he actually signed a copy of this book for me. And the pen with which he signed, right? Yes. He told me, you keep this pen. I have it well preserved. That is a pen. Yes. I use the pen. Listen to what happened, because I told you I have completed a book that I'm using as a way to poetize engineering or to engineer poetry through this encounter. I wrote 40 sonnets born of that encounter. And one of them, I would share with your audience one of them. Yes. This pen he gave me, I used it to write this poem.
Do you have it? You want to just show us even just the tip of the pen?
The tip of the pen?
Yes.
No, it is.
Analog and keep.
You don't carry that kind of pen because it is in a shell, right?
It's in a vault. It's in a vault.
In a vault. I only remove it when it is. Yep. But just listen to the poem.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Yes.
And I titled the poem "The Lion of Abeokuta." I said the lion is patient and of wisdom full, and woe to that who take him for a fool. He is not but wisdom in flesh and bones, for it would not eat scones, but break stones. And at his feet sat this cup with thirst, only to be quenched by meats. With that mirth, he alone brings to feel a longing soul. For humankind is not to be the soul when the crest and crown his destiny was. As the pride of prides showcases his paws, displays to do the talking. No, not the roar. Far from the squeaky squeal of a scared boa, who found the lion belly full of bone. Bless his ocean's bosom, wisdom full. And the last line is, this poem was originally written with a pen given to me by the Nobel laureate W.S.
Oh my goodness. I'm completely I'm having chills just listening to you, and I felt like almost I was there. I feel a little bit transported to that
Yes.
location in Tuskegee. And this is just a quick curious one. Does he travel with handlers, or he travels alone?
No, he travels a lot.
But he travels alone or with handlers?
No, with alone. Listen.
Wow.
Just listen. I know this is no secret. When we met in Rabat, Morocco, Prof had flown from Brazil 20 hours, and after 2 days of work with little to no sleep, we were traveling back from Rabat, right, to France, where I was going to continue to Atlanta, Georgia, and he was going to continue to Los Angeles. So when we were in the when the chauffeur was sent to us, we were carrying conversations. And this is one little thing I want your audience to know, how personable Professor Wole Soyinka is. I say this, and I'll explain why I'm telling you this. We were talking, and he turned to me, wait a minute. It seems as if during our encounter, you did not give me your card. I need your card. I said, Prof, I really wanted us to be at the airport and sit down before I could give you my card. He said, no, you reach for it and give it to me now. And I reached for the card, gave it to him. We've been in communication. Okay? We've been in communication. So he is still very strong,
alert,
very alert. And he gave, when he received his birthday honors or trophy given by the Royal Academy in Morocco, Prof gave, and I'll share that video with you, he gave about a 15-minute intervention from off the cuff.
Wow.
A very brief, that is, it is not, this is somebody we have to celebrate. We celebrate.
Absolutely.
We should thank God for his life. Thank God for him, for everything. He is just really beyond, right?
Yeah.
He is beyond what we might think, because he's 90. He should be walking with a cane. No, he doesn't. You might think because he's 90, he would need somebody to pull his luggage for him. He didn't even let me touch, right, his small computer bag. He said,
wow, no. Wow.
We got on board the plane. He lifted his bag,
put it up
on the overhead compartment, locked it, sat there.
Wow.
So these are things. He is just a blessing.
What kind of diet did you observe? Does he eat regular?
It is not about diet. He, from everything, is not somebody who eats a lot, but like him, or like I should say like him, because he is a wine connoisseur. All right.
Yeah.
He's a collector of wines, and that is one of the things we talked about. I collect wines too. All right. I collect wines, and he's a collector of wines, and he likes enjoying a nice glass of wine with his meal. He is fine.
Last one. Did you pick any sentiments from him on the Southern Cameroon's case?
No, we did. Well, I don't need to say anything.
Just a snippet. You don't have to give me too much because this forum is for everybody.
A snippet is just that I know he will not take offense that I share this with anybody, right? The Cameroon government invited him to give a talk. He turned that down outrightly. That until they can treat.
That's enough.
Until they can either part from Southern Cameroons or treat Southern Cameroons, right? He was not he was no party to entertain any dictatorial regime.
Thank you. I think on that note, I am very grateful, Prof, for you making the time and taking us to Marrakesh, to Rabat, to Americas, to Tuskegee, and we spared you of the other things that happen in France, in Australia, and all the other places. But hopefully, during a future edition, we'll focus on that. But I want to thank you for the work that you're doing as a writer, as an author, as a philosopher, as an educator. We want to thank you for investing in the young people. And yes, who knew you had gastronomical skills and you even taught them how to make puff puff, and you got me hungry. But I want to thank you, Prof, so much for making this time. I want to wish you a great day, and we'll reconnect offline to continue this conversation and then talk about part 2, because surely there's still so much that we did not get to. We did not go deep into the Quakers enough. We did not go deep into the other issues. I still want us to talk about it. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. You're welcome.
Grateful. Yes, Prof. Thank you.
You have a blessed one.
Yes, sir.
Cheers.
Cheers.